Hello and welcome to the Luke Lunchtime Takeaway. Week by week we're going through Luke's Gospel. We're very near the end now and we're getting to the events that lead us to the death and resurrection of Jesus. Some people say that what we need in these times is strong leadership. Strong men who will lead, men who will be strong in their marriage, men who will be strong at home, men who will be strong in their church, men who will be strong in their job, in society, in their nation, or whoever it might be. We need men who will push on and get their own way and get things done, because that's what we need more of. More alpha males, more people who will really push on and lead. And people try to argue that that's somehow Christian, to have that whole approach. Is that really what Jesus himself taught? Well, come with me to the upper room in Jerusalem the night before Jesus was crucified, and he's preparing his disciples for what is about to happen and preparing them to lead his church. He has celebrated the Lord's Supper with them, which is what we thought about last time. And now he's teaching them and giving them some very clear direction as to how they are to live and how they are to lead in his church. And actually the things that he says are quite shocking. First of all, in verses 24 to 30, we find the disciples quarrelling. And they're quarrelling about which one of them is going to be the greatest in his kingdom. And Jesus says to them in reply, "The kings of the Gentiles, the kings of the nations, exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves." Now, the world is full of powerful leaders who throw their weight around and they expect everyone to treat them as the most important and the greatest and all the rest of it. Some of the leaders of particular nations build their prestige with big vanity projects, don't they? Where they're building a tower block or an art gallery or a bridge or whatever it might be. And they want people to know that they built this and it was built in their honor and they are benefactors of the public. It's all about their fame, their reputation, their ego. And Jesus says to his disciples, don't let that ever be like that with you. You must be very, very different. In those days, they respected those who were old, not those who were young. And Jesus says, let the greatest become like the youngest. In other words, like the most humble, as though you are starting out and you are learning your way. Learn to be servants if you're going to be leaders in my kingdom. Now, John tells us in his gospel account of the upper room that Jesus took a towel and wrapped himself in it, and he knelt down and he washed his disciples' feet as a sign of his service. And Luke hints at that here in verse 27 when he says, I am among you as the one who serves. And Jesus follows that in verses 28 and 29 with a reference to what will happen in the new creation. Yes, there, Jesus' disciples will be with him. They will sit down at the great messianic banquet in the final new creation, and they will be rulers in that new creation. But here and now in this life, the thing that they have to learn more than anything else is humility, of learning what it means to be servant-like and to have their lives modeled on the servanthood of Jesus himself. And then in verses 31 to 34, Jesus turns his attention to proud, headstrong Simon Peter, a leader among his disciples. And he says to him, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. Satan had demanded of God that God would allow him access to all the disciples of Jesus so that he could sift them like a harvester sifts a pile of wheat. You throw the wheat up into the air and the chaff blows away and it's separated out from the good grain. And Satan's reckoning that all the disciples of Jesus are just going to be like the chaff that blows away. And so he wants to sift through them and show their weakness. And it has to be said, where were these strong men when Jesus was put on trial? They just melted away. They weren't there. But Jesus says, I have prayed for you, Peter, that after my death and resurrection, your faith will not fail and that you can be used to strengthen your brothers. But it comes with a catch. Peter immediately feels very proud about that and says, yes, yes, Lord. Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. But that's just Peter's bravado. Jesus knew what would happen. Nothing that happened during his trial and his crucifixion and his resurrection, none of it took him by surprise. He knew what Simon Peter would be like. That's why he called him Simon, Simon, to remind him of his weakness. And he humbles him now by saying, verse 34, I tell you, Peter, the cock will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. And that's exactly what happened. Peter denied 3 times that he knew Jesus before the first cockerel crowed the next morning, as we'll see next week. And what Jesus is saying is, don't put your trust in your own strength. Find your strength in God. Now, in verses 35 to 38, the third part of this session of teaching, Jesus turns to the rest of the disciples and he contrasts the life that they've been enjoying now with Jesus with the life that they're going to have when Jesus has gone back to heaven. While Jesus has been with them, the crowd have been receiving them and they've been treating them with great excitement. They've been willing to give food to them so that they could live and somewhere to stay when they came to visit, and they've been treated royally by the public. But now Jesus is going to his cross. Jesus is aware that all the predictions that have been made about him are about to come true, about to be fulfilled. And the disciples need to be aware that everything is going to change. Satan wanted to attack them, and once the church is born, the church is going to be under attack all the time, and he wants to destroy them. And we need to remember that today. We are weak, just like the disciples were. We do not have power in ourselves to be strong men and women who can fight the battle of the Christian life in our own strength. It's no good just beating our chests and saying, I am a strong man. We need to learn how weak we are. We need to learn how much we need to depend on the strength that only Jesus can give us. And all our models of leadership need to be modeled on Jesus as he goes to his cross. He goes there as a servant. He goes to be willing to suffer. He goes to be rejected by everybody. He takes our shame and our guilt upon himself. And all our leadership must be willing to serve and take the lowest place, just as he did then. And when Jesus has taught all that to his disciples, he stands up and he goes to the door and he leads them out, and he goes out to be betrayed and crucified. And we'll come together to think about that next time. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.